Hey guys. Historically, humans have sort of undervalued wetlands. I think they perceive these landscapes as being eerie and spooky and sort of wastelands that prevented their development over time. And so they have systematically destroyed many of them. However, scientists started to realize that there are many ecological values, uh, what we call ecosystem services, that are regulating that help to improve environmental quality. And so there's an easy way to remember these ecological functions because they are represented by four sort of common household items: a sponge, a coffee filter, a thermostat, and a crib. So let's go through each item one at a time. Starting with the sponge. We can see in this image that we have farmland that has flooded. I don't think that's a coincidence. Farmers uh, really like to grow crops in areas that are adjacent to rivers or on floodplains because floodplains are flat. They're incredibly fertile since those rivers historically flood and deposit nutrients. And they, of course, have access to water for irrigation as well as to transport their goods. Unfortunately, farmers oftentimes come into confrontation with these wetlands because they like to develop these lands, and so they often fill the wetlands in and destroy them to make way for crops. In doing so, they lose that vital ecological service, the sponge effect, so to speak. All of the vegetation in wetlands helps to absorb excess precipitation. That absorption of water allows the water to infiltrate down into the soil where it can recharge groundwater. It also reduces the likelihood and intensity of flooding. So if there is ever a large rain event and the river is swollen, when it floods its banks, the wetland itself helps to minimize the intensity of that flood. You can see here in this image with the loss of wetlands, the flooding is highly catastrophic and the whole area has been damaged. Coastal areas that experience hurricanes and intense storms are also protected from wetlands as it can protect against storm surge and coastal erosion. In addition to a sponge, we also saw a coffee filter because wetlands help to trap and hold pollutants that are running off the land. Agricultural land without wetlands oftentimes contributes to water quality problems as the runoff contains sediments, fertilizers, and pesticides. With a riparian buffer and intact wetlands, the wetlands could help trap some of that material. The microbes in the soil also help to break down through decomposition some organic waste. Wetlands are also very productive with lots of plant life, and so the thermostat is represented by its ability to sequester carbon dioxide, the plants that is, and the plants taking in carbon dioxide helps to mitigate the effects of the greenhouse effect and global climate change. Finally, the crib, wildlife habitat. Oftentimes, rivers are a location where juvenile fish would be eaten very quickly due to a high concentration of predators. So juvenile fish oftentimes like to get out of the main stem of a river and they like to find their way into small nooks and crannies in floodplain wetland habitat in the backwaters so they can beef up and bulk up and find protection from predators. In fact, when we talk about wetlands, they are critical habitat for a variety of species. When we look at the Endangered Species Act and those that are on that list, it turns out that many of them are on there that are also dependent on wetlands that have been destroyed. So as a result, a half of all fish species on the list utilize these wetlands. A third of all bird species on the list are dependent on wetlands, and a sixth of all mammals are also critically connected to these very important habitats. Aside from the ecological benefits, they certainly stimulate the economy. People do enjoy recreating in wetland habitats, whether it's photography or canoeing and kayaking. And so that can bring big business and revenues and jobs to an area. We also harvest various fruits like cranberries and blackberries and blueberries. And finally, it turns out that bog systems that have vertically growing peat or moss can be extracted. That material is actually the precursor, or sort of like the ingredients in the long-term formation of coal. Now, it takes 300 million years for that peat to turn into coal, but you can extract that peat and burn it for energy and heat. That's it for now. We're going to take a look at, in our next screencast, the destruction of wetlands.